my Portuguese is not very good, so you might want to put on your headsets. So I don't really like it when people from outside of my organization or my country come in and tell me what to do, so I hope you don't take it that way. I'm going to leave you with a very simple message today about 3 things that need to take place here if you would like to improve your waste systems. And first of all, I'd like to say that I love Brazil. It's one of my favorite places on earth, and I really enjoy coming here, and the people are wonderful, the geography is wonderful, and you have a lot of blessings here, especially the weather. I live in Washington, D.C., where our winter is just ending, and it's been pretty miserable, so thank you for the invitation to come down. I watched the video, and I listened to the comments that were made, and I heard words like depressing, and concerning, and crisis, and that kind of thing. But I got to tell you, from a guy coming from the waste industry in the U.S., that's not the feeling that comes over me when I see what's going on here. The feeling that comes over me is a sense of jealousy, and I really think that you should realize the opportunity that you have here. In the United States, we have a very healthy waste industry, as you might know. It's very profitable. It's very efficient, and Waste Management is the biggest member company of my organization. It's one of the biggest companies and most profitable companies in the world. And, I think that, I'm also jealous because there's a similarity here between what happened in the 60s and 70s in the United States as to what's going on here right now. I was a little kid in the 60s and 70s, so I didn't really appreciate it, but the 60s and 70s in the United States was a very exciting time. You may have heard of Woodstock and things of that nature. I kind of wish that's when I was actually alive, during that environmental movement that took place in the United States. A little later on, Jim Riley, who I brought with me from my staff, who's our lobbyist on NWRA, who's responsible for affecting how regulations are formed in the United States and for the benefit of the industry, is going to speak on the history of the environmental movement in the United States. And it was a very exciting time. And, I can't really think of another time that had more just depth to it in the United States. And that's what you guys can start here, and that's one of the things I'll talk to you about today. I also later on today, you're going to hear from Ann Germain, who is our Vice President of Technical and Regulatory Affairs. Ann knows everything about waste, and you should spend some time talking to her today. I heard some comments about dumps and landfills. We had dumps in the 70s in the United States, as was mentioned, but now we have modern landfills that are very impressive places, and something that we support very much. So let me tell you a little bit about my organization. We represent about 700 companies in the United States, and Waste Management is the largest, Republic is the second largest, and it goes on down to guys that own like 3 trucks in Iowa. It's a very, very proud industry. It's very much a part of the communities that they operate in. And we represent the private side of the industry. Over 50% of residential waste in the United States is collected by the private sector, and over 80% of commercial and industrial waste is collected by the private sector. So that's who we represent. And it's I say we have, about 600 companies. They operate about 18,000 facilities, and those aren't just landfills. They're incinerators. They're what we call MRFs, where we sort recycled materials, and we'll talk a great deal about recycling today as well. We have 420,000 employees employed by the industry, and that's $21 billion in payroll. So we're paying employees in the United States $21 billion to handle the waste, and that's the substantial industry, it can be done here. like to say that there are three things that we do differently in the United States, and there are three things that you can embrace here to change the way that things are operating. The first is, in the U.S., we have a very strong federal regulation relative to the handling of solid waste, and we'll talk a great deal about that later today. But the foundational point is to come up with a strong federal regulation, and that's called the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act in the United States. Without those federal regulations, everything else seems to fall apart. We also have a lot of local and city municipality regulations, but none of those would exist without a strong federal component. The other thing that we have in the United States is that the citizenry, the public really appreciates the industry, and you can tell that just on a daily basis. Every day we get stories in about how the local garbage man has done this or that for the community, and it's just a fundamental part of society in the U.S. People in the United States have come to appreciate the waste collection industry. That all started in the 70s when we had the environmental movement, but the positive effects to public health are immeasurable in the United States with the waste collection industry, and everybody realizes that now. A lot of people remember what the dumps looked like in the 70s, and now they don't see that anymore. They see these beautiful hills. A lot of times people don't even realize that this is a landfill right next to them in their neighborhood because it's so well taken care of. So we have the community embracing the industry, and because of that, they're willing to pay a small fee to have their waste collected. And almost all commercial and industrial waste pay a private hauler to come and pick up their waste. And many residential areas and municipalities do the same. So, that's the second thing you need to do is you need to, start this environmental movement and start the appreciation for the industry and what the world could look like, with proper waste handling. And people will pay for that once they realize, how different their communities could look, how greatly public health could be improved. They will be willing to pay a small fee. Like Carlos said, people pay for TV, they pay for gas, they pay for water, and they need to start appreciating what a small fee would do for them relative to the look of their community, relative to the public health of the community. And I think that can be done with some careful public relations campaigns and things like that, getting the community to appreciate it. So then the third thing that we do that's probably a little bit different that would have to happen here is we have an expression that all garbage is local. It's probably the most popular expression that you hear in the industry. All garbage is local, and it means a lot of things. One, even though we do have strong federal regulations, things are different in communities, so there need to be some local rules and regulations and methods of handling things. So we have an appreciation for the fact that each individual community needs to do things a little bit differently. And we also have an appreciation for the private sector garbage collection. We believe that if you turn over the waste handling to the private sector, innovation comes about, investment comes about, and it becomes a business. I'm sitting here, you guys probably think, oh, he's coming from the United States, and I'm sitting here watching this video. All I could see was dollar signs. I'm sorry. You guys have an unbelievable opportunity to make this an industry that makes money, that employs people, and that makes this even more beautiful place to live than it already is. So, I encourage you to embrace those three things. In the United States, we complain about regulations a lot. You may have heard of President Trump. He likes to complain about regulations a lot, but that's because the pendulum has swung in the opposite direction. In the 1970s, when we first had our Environmental Protection Agency come about, it was very much needed. We needed those basic laws. We have the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act. Those things at the federal level did unbelievable things for the United States. Now we push back as an industry on some new regulations now and again, but we still have those fundamental laws that are in place. You won't hear an industry group saying, hey, we need to get rid of the Clean Water Act. It just doesn't happen. You need those strong, fundamental federal regulations. Then everything else flows from that. You also need to work on what people think of you as an industry, make them see the value of good waste handling. A lot of disease comes from poor waste handling. People don't appreciate sometimes the amount of disease that has been eliminated in the United States from good waste handling, just like nobody appreciates soap anymore. Soap is one of the greatest public health successes in the history of the world, but nobody thinks about it anymore just because it's taken for granted. And we're almost to that point of people taking our industry for granted in the U.S., but they're still willing to pay a fee to have their waste collected. And then finally, you need to turn this over to the private sector. You need to embrace this as a real industry, and you need to realize that things will be different here and there locally. But we're here to help you. We were just talking before the meeting. We run a big waste show, a trade show every year. It's called Waste Expo, and I think they're going to show a video of it here shortly. We get about 14,000 people that come, and it takes a couple hours just to walk through the trade show floor, where we're showing our new fancy garbage trucks and that kind of thing. We think we need to probably have a session next year for Brazil, and I think we should do that, and I think we should invite all of the executives here to come to Waste Expo, because we have people in the United States that would love to meet you. Just being honest, we have people that sell dump trucks and recycling equipment and that kind of thing. I mean, garbage trucks that would love to infiltrate the market here, because they're going to see dollar signs like I do. Waste handling is one of the few industries where you're actually doing a good thing while making money. Think of other industries, the construction industry. We doing a good thing by building buildings? Yeah, maybe, maybe not, but waste handling is just a beautiful, beautiful industry. You're doing a good thing and you can make a lot of money doing it. You just have to have the right platform. So I invite you to come to the United States, see how we're doing things, but you have a beautiful opportunity here. I'm jealous. I'm jealous because I'd like to get in on this industry. I'm jealous because I would like to be part of this environmental movement that I can see coming. It's just going to be a wonderful thing. So I congratulate you on your effort here, and thank you for inviting me. And Ann and Jim are a lot smarter than I am. They're going to have a lot more intelligent things to say across the day. But thank you for all of this, and let us know how we can help. So thank you.